Chiryl has invited me to the Champers location. Now, this is the location all of us know right here with this beautiful backdrop of the ocean. The real question and story is, how did we get here? Chiryl, thank you so much for the invite back. This is a story in and of itself.
I know, my whole life seems to be story after story.
What a great life.
I know. Well, one day I'm sat in what is now Tapas Restaurant. That used to be Champers. And we were there we spent 10 years in that location. And in my 9th year, I'm thinking life can't get any better than this. I've got a beautiful waterfront restaurant, which I really enjoy. And this is the business. I'm happy in myself, in my space. My landlord calls me up and says, can we have a meeting tomorrow? Because I've got a few things to discuss with you. And I thought, okay, no problem, because I know my lease is coming up for renewal. It's a 10-year lease. The lease is coming up for renewal. And then he said to me, you might want to bring Joe with you. So I thought, okay, this is definitely the lease coming up for renewal. You know, Joe is my financial advisor. So we sat down at the restaurant and he said to me, well, I can see that you've been doing really well. Champers is doing really well. And I have a proposition to put to you. I want you to, come into my business. We want to take over Champers, and we're also looking at other locations. So your input would be Champers, and we're looking at opening up other restaurants and stuff like that. So you would head up all of that, and we would, we can make you very wealthy. We would do really well. And I said, but my lease is coming up for renewal now, and you had always said to me that the renewal of the lease would be no problem. And he said, yeah, but we've had a change of plans. We've got so many properties and we've got all of these things going on. And we think that with Champers coming into the fold and you opening up other restaurants, that this is the way we would want to go.
But to be clear, it would mean that you technically no longer own Champers.
Exactly. So my 9 years and all that I had built up, I would now be given, that would be my input into the new business venture. So I would be literally giving up working for myself to going to now work with other partners. I just got rid of a partner 8 years before, so now I'm going back into, so Joe said, so exactly how this would work, and they spelled out the different scenarios. And he said to me, I don't know, this is Joe now saying, this doesn't really feel right. So then my landlord said to me, well, Champers is nothing without this location. And I thought to myself, well, Champers is me, really. Champers could be anywhere. It has done well in this location, but I think that I have started to build a brand. So we went away. We then said we would go away and think about it, because I wasn't really given much of a choice. I either had to go in with them, or I had to pick up myself and find another location. So after they went away, Joe said to me, you don't have an option. You have to find a location. You don't have an option, because going to work with, this is what you fought so hard to be on your own. You've built a business. Why are you now going to give it away? The landlord has seen you doing well, and you hear so many stories of people saying they've thought out a business idea, whatever, and the landlord now sees them doing really well and decides that they want to get in on it. They want a piece of the action. They either want a piece of the action, or they give the people notice and they open their own business doing what you were doing.
Or what they thought you were doing.
Exactly. So we went back to them and said, no, we're definitely not interested in being taken over, more or less. So it was said, okay, well then we'll increase your rent. So my rent went up by $10,000. By $10,000.
Wow.
You know, I went from paying $15,000 to $25,000. So then I thought to myself, well, you know what? It is time to go. It is time. I mean, and at that time, to be honest with you, I'm not going to say that I thought it was going to be an easy process, because
Right.
I'm now in a beachfront property. Show me another beachfront property that is available. I couldn't think of one. I called up my lawyer at the time, David Gittins. He's now deceased, and David said to me, well, Chiryl, what are you worrying about? We're going to find somewhere. You know, we'll all start looking. We're going to find somewhere.
But how easy is that to hear and believe? The way everybody else seemed to be like, don't worry about it. We need to need to find someplace.
I think they, looking back at it, they were trying to make me feel good.
Right.
That it isn't all lost, you know? They were trying to build up my confidence and make me feel good that, look, you've got this. We can do this. So every single person that I, you know, close to me, close friends, family to me, I put them out to look for somewhere, you know, find.
So now we're all headhunting.
Everybody is looking. People are calling me up. Did you see that building opposite? Well, there's a property opposite Baba's.
Okay,
you know,
yes,
there's a
yes.
big. It was an old house at the time.
Correct.
Did you see that? Did you, you know? And then Freddie Clark, deceased as well. Mr. Clark called me up and said, I own a house, you know, down on the beach. It's a little bit far. Da, da, da. You know, everybody was calling me up with ideas of places that I could move. And then we started looking in earnest every Saturday, every Sunday. Anytime I was off, Paul and myself, we got in the car and we just drove around. Then Paul, Sonia, Choi, my accountant, Sonia knew Paula, and Paula had mentioned to her, Paula Cozier, that they had this property and they were putting it up for sale. And Sonia said to me, you might want to pass by and have a look at Thornton. But my husband Paul was doing some work for Paula. So Paul came to drop off the invoice, and he saw the property and he called me up and he said, Shez, there's a really, it's old, it's run down, but it's fantastic. The view is fantastic.
So he could see the potential.
So he could see the potential.
Right.
So he said, you've got to come and see this. I said, well, that's strange because Sonia only told me about that yesterday. So he came back home, got me, we drove up here, and we walked out. It was an old house, an old Bajan beach style house,
Right.
you know. The walls were rubble and stone, and it was in a pretty bad state because Mrs. Smith had passed on for quite a few years. And we walked out onto the patio downstairs, and Paul said to me, do not think about what you're seeing around you, think about this.
Right.
Think about the view,
The pricelessness of the property.
and the beauty of it not being on the main road. It's a side road. This place has so much potential. So then we set about making, because we were now going from where we're renting, and I've always been very careful with the company's money. That's one thing I can say, that while I like nice things, I'm definitely not flash.
Right.
And the company's money is the company's money. So Champers is doing well. You know, we have money in the bank. We can pay our bills. We can do things. And luckily, we had the deposit.
Right.
But moving into something like this takes more than a deposit.
It does.
You know, so we then started the process of trying to get financing, moving out of our old location. So we went back to the landlord and we told him what that we were no longer doing that. We didn't tell him our plans because, of course. But Barbados is a small place, so when the plans got out, it was, I'll just say it was not easy. I think I've been through a lot. But looking back now, if I saw my landlords tomorrow, it's taken a while for me to come to this point. But if I would probably say, because you can't hug anymore, I would probably say thank you so much for giving me the push that I needed, because I would have been very happy sitting down there paying $15,000, $20,000 a month rent, and somebody making all the profit, and I'm just working to pay a landlord. But that push, when I told a friend of mine, Tony Pickering, who owns Hotel Foods, that I was being more or less thrown out, and he said, "I'm so glad that happened to you." And I was upset. I said, "But Tony,
how dare you?
You are my friend. How could you be saying something like this?" He says, "No, because you need to get up off your backside and look for something."
And isn't it amazing how people see things very, very differently? So let's play Mythbusters here. Because along the way, mind you didn't learn it all at the same time, but along the way you would have learned certain things. Let's debunk some of the myths. Bajans don't support Bajans.
That is not true at all. And I learned that when we reopened Champers in this location. And my landlords then opened their own restaurant in where I was. And I thought to myself, I think I underestimated how people viewed my product and me. And I was getting so many calls, "Don't worry, we're never going to that restaurant. Don't worry, we're going to support you." And they came out and support me. Up to this day, even though we do get a lot of foreign support, I would say 80% of my support is local. So Bajans do support Bajans. Bajans don't like to think that one of their own has been unfaired.
I knock wood on that. I always say that. Bajans hate to sit by and watch somebody being unfaired.
And I think that is what it felt like to me, because I had been nothing. I was a good tenant. My rent was always paid on time. I did all of the right things. I am not one to, I'm very thin when it comes to paying my bills. And I couldn't understand why you would think that you could just come and take over, And then when we said no, that we were going to go ahead, all of the other stuff that was done to make me feel uncomfortable in a space that I was paying rent for. So, again, Barbados is a small place. I didn't have to say anything to anybody. It just became common knowledge. And the support was there. People were all, when we moved in here, a lot of the suppliers said to me, "We know things are going to be a little difficult." Mr. Bourne from Fergus, he said to me, "Chiryl, don't worry about paying. You owe me some money, don't worry about it. Get yourself sorted out. What else do you need to set up that business?" And I mean, Carl Bourne was there, and I had like Stanfield, Scott, all of my suppliers that had stood by me over the years, came to me and said, we've bought you, So yes, Bajans do support Bajans.
Mythbuster number 2. Women are too emotional to be good at business.
Sometimes we get emotional. Yeah, I will have a cry. I love a cry. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. But the thing about it is that our emotions help to make us better at business, because we're not always looking at the dollar, at the bottom line. And a staff member can come to you with a problem, and within your heart that you really need, you shouldn't be spending that money doing that, you should really be. But being emotional allows you to do that, you know, because you're not always looking at the bottom line. You're looking at what you're being human,
Right.
you know. And sometimes, I mean, I'm a Libran, and sometimes I will get a little hot. I try to stay very calm. I've taken in my training, but when it's done, it's done.
Yeah.
You don't carry it around with you.
Yeah.
You know, you don't carry it around with you. No, being emotional, I think, is what makes us as business women better.
And myth buster number 3. Recessions are no time to open and or grow a business.
I think that's every time we've gone into a recession, I have looked at what we're doing. And the first recession for me was the South Coast Sewage Project when I was down the road. You know, and I would see my customers crawling over open trenches in the road, over boulders, whatever, to come and sit and have lunch. And you had to feel, God, that, you know, if they're willing to do this for you, you know, then you must be doing something right. So you now have to we had to look at all the things that we were doing, all the cost cutting things that we could do to cut costs to keep the business afloat and to still maintain the staff level. 2008 we had the recession, and then we had 9/11.
You did?
And then we had 2008. Well, 9/11 to me did not really feel, I think it was how the government at the time, I think it was Owen Arthur, handled it, that you never really felt like how the rest of the world felt. But 2008, that, again, we looked at everything we were doing, decided how we could improve making the business more efficient. And we started doing our own laundry. We opened an area in the storeroom, put in a laundry. We actually hired people. So we hired 3 people, did our own laundry. We started baking our own bread. All the things, anything that was outsourced, we started to do ourselves. And just like this, what we're going through now, we did our final phase of renovations during lockdown.
Yep.
You know, I mean, it does take balls. I don't have any, but I've got a lot of people that do. Because you have to have faith in what you're doing. And you have to think, I'm not going to let this beat me. The ash has been horrible because all of your costs, you know, we're already fighting to keep costs down with COVID.
Right.
But the cost of everything is going up. And now you have the ash that was very invasive, and all of our cleaning costs went up.
That's correct.
I mean, just to clean your roof, $2,800. And these are all things that you're bringing in extra staff constantly to keep cleaning, not to mention what the water bill is going to be like.
Oh gosh,
You know?
yes.
So I think during a recession, it's always time not to bury your head in the sand, but to look around and see how can I make best of a bad situation. You know, you look at your pricing, you look at, and somehow in recessions, prices don't go down.
At all.
You know, the price of food constantly goes up, but people still want deals.
Yeah.
And you have to think, well, how can I keep my pricing good
Yeah.
and maintain employment and maintain a product? You know, so you're constantly looking, you're constantly thinking about ways to do things better. So no, I think recessions are times that you need to look inward and just get everybody on board. Involve the staff, because if you don't involve them, it's only your idea.
Absolutely.
You know, so you involve them. How can we do X, Y, and Z? You know, can y'all see anything that we can do to? And you'd be surprised at the ideas that you get.